We got the mic working. Everybody hear me okay? All right. Well, good morning. All right, come on now. Good morning. All right. Well, we're going to go ahead and get this thing started. Kind of got a lot of slides to go over, not much time, so I'm going to dive on into this. And right away, off the bat, I'd like to thank Alan Wilmore. He works with me there in Coffee County. Me and him, we're kind of partners in crime, so you'll see him walking around the conference. If you got any questions for Alan, he's a wealth of knowledge, and make sure you look him up. So let's talk just a little bit. Where is Coffee County? Let's see. Well, pointer ain't really working much, but over there in the far southwest corner, Tennessee, that's where you got Memphis at. And then kind of in the middle right there with the red star on it, that's where Nashville is, all the country singers. And, you know, not only am I talking first, it's a wonder that I'm even up here this week, because if Jeremy Pruitt hadn't accepted the coaching job in Knoxville, I was next in line to coach the Tennessee Vols. So I was about to have a career change, but that's where Knoxville is. And right there where that red arrow's pointing, that is where, that's Coffee County, Tennessee. Little place there, River Valley. And we've got some inherently pretty good soils and a lot of row crop going on. We've got about 53,000 reported acres of cropland in the county. And since about 2000, we started this in about 2013, and currently we've got about 70 folks and a little bit over half of our acres that have adopted cover crop systems that have moved into, we're just naturally transgressing into more and more biomass. So that's a little bit about what Coffee County is like. Now, folks, I got to ask you, I'm going to get into some data and stuff here in a minute, but right off the bat, are you all blessed with a burden? I mean, I think we're all blessed with a burden. I mean, one, we're blessed to be involved in agriculture, but look at some of the burdens we have. Me, professionally, I work for the Natural Resources Conservation Service, and we've changed names a couple times already. And I'm going to be honest with you, I don't think conservation is good enough anymore. Okay, because if we look at defining conservation, what does that mean? That means to maintain what we've currently got, right? For something close to that. Ladies and gentlemen, as I travel across the country, we don't need to be conserving a degraded resource. And primarily across this great land of ours, most fields I see are degraded. So I don't want to conserve a degraded state of mind. But here's the beauty in all this. We can rejuvenate. We can regenerate these soils. And that's what I'm going to talk to you about a little bit today, is where we've taken our soils from a state where we halted the degradation through long-term no-till, and now these soils are rejuvenating. Okay? And it's amazing to see the transformations, what these soils are doing, what the farms are doing, because when you start rejuvenating your land, you start rejuvenating a family. And then that snowballs into where you rejuvenate a small community. Then you rejuvenate your county. And before long, my overall goal is I want this nation, agriculture, to be rejuvenated in it. And luckily, we've got that ability. If y'all been studying cover crops, soil health, all the buzzwords, you've had a lot of these terms beat into your head about the four main principles. You'll probably hear them more and more over the week. But the number one thing that you got to remember is you have to understand your social ecology. How many of you have a little peer? Is there peer pressure in farming? When you drive down the road, do you care what your neighbor thinks? All right. But we got to understand it. We got to understand how everything works. Everything in Coffee County is not the same as where you all are at. And the second most important, and maybe it could be most important, is your integrity is going to equal the outcome, the ecological integrity of your land. There ain't but one person that can control it. And if y'all want to take a mirror and turn it around, it's you. You have that ability to control whatever, okay? I was sitting there arguing with one of my college professors I had that he tries to proclaim he trained me. But we was arguing about this last night, wasn't we, Dr. Cripps? All right? And I tell him the reason why he likes data so much because that's what his brain can comprehend. All right? But let's kick this thing off a little bit talking about the simplest form of the content of the mind consists in data. Why do we all like it so much? Because it's easy to comprehend, right? I've got a beard, I've got a bald spot. That's a data point, all right? We can comprehend that, okay? But just think about, just a little bit of information is worth a whole lot of data. And we keep going down this old euphorism right here. Just one little bitty ounce of wisdom, just a speckle of wisdom, is worth all that stuff combined. Now, folks, data is extremely important. And we're going to be drinking data out of a fire hose all week long, right? That's what we come to these conferences for. And everything we're going to hear is going to be important. But don't just focus on the data. What is the end goal of having all this data? We want to gain wisdom from it, right? So I ask you and beg you, do not try to take this data home and farm it. We do not want to farm data. We want to gain systematic wisdom in how our farms are designed to function, how they're designed to gain resiliency, how we can grow corn crops when it's wet, how we can grow corn crops when it's dry, and how we can really fill the bins when we get a good growing season. That's gaining systematic wisdom, and that's where we got to move to on our farms. Now, I may ask you, in a smaller crowd, we discuss this a little bit, but you can look at this picture, and you can tell in your mind what you see. Some of you is going to see a car. Some of you is going to see a lot of pieces of a car. But what we're looking at here, this is a system. And this is every piece that is required for that car to perform its function as a system. And the function of that car is what? Just to get us from point A to point B, right? That's the only thing that it's meant for. And if you got a car that looks like that, you ain't got to worry about picking up girls if you're a teenager anyway. So that car only has one function, and that's to go from point A to point B. We put all the pieces back together. But everything there, we get it all put back together, get it torqued right, but we leave off one tire. Everything else is right. All we've left off is one tire. How well is that system going to function? We're just missing one part. Our farms are a lot like that as well. We may have just about all the pieces of the puzzle, but for them to operate as a system, it's hard for them because we're missing a few key parts. Soil health. It's been a buzzword for a while. My 9-year-old son drew this up, and this is all you need to know about soil health. Now, granted, he's probably just a little bit brainwashed, all right? But if my 9-year-old son can get it, I'm not saying you all have to accept it, but I think we can all understand it. And it's real simple. The sun drives this system. It's that simple. The sun drives the system, and there ain't but one thing on our cropland that's going to absorb sunlight and turn it into bug food, and that's a living plant. And anytime we do not have a living plant on our fields, they will be going through a state of degradation and consumption and cannibalism within. Now, most of us are pretty well versed in the soil triangle. We beat this to death, and we have a real good understanding of it. The chemical and the physical properties of soils, and they are extremely important, and we must understand them well. But if we're laying up there at the Louisville Regional Medical Center, and that green line's flat like that red line is, what's that mean? We're dead, right? We're dead. Now, you may be laying there. Chemically, you still on the bed, right? Physically, you still on the bed, but what are you missing? You ain't got no life. Chemical and physical properties alone of the soil do not have no life. They are called dirt, okay? We do not want to farm dirt. But we put this new triangle, and the driving force, the moderator, what controls it all is the life in the soil. And once we put the life back in the soil, then we have soil, folks. And that's where we want to get to. Now, Coffee County, 2013. Come back to the county as the district conservationist, and I stand out in the field. I speak to fields. I just stand there and we get to talking, and so I speak in field. And I ask them, what are you missing? And I think we can put this wheel on all of our fields, not just your operation, but every field you can develop your own wheel for it. Now, this wheel's just missing one spoke, right? Probably a pretty strong wheel, but it can still collapse, right? That 1 weak spot. Coffee County, we have been no-tilling since Moby Dick was a sardine, okay? We started this stuff a long time ago, kept with it, didn't break from it. Had fields that's been no-tilled 30, 35 plus years. Hadn't seen no iron since then. But they're still missing something. And what that missing spoke is, or was for us, was living covers. And I'm going to go ahead and just tell you right now that if your field is missing living covers, you're missing a spoke on your field as well. So, we started this study, sat down with the board. I was really wanting to start pursuing this, saw this is where we need to go in the county. So, my board supervisors, we sat down as a district, we wrote a grant, got it funded, that really, so we're going to look at 3 years, we're going to run this. And ended up getting 18 seasoned no-till producers to commit, had about 58 fields in the study, and this thing encompassed about 2,200 acres is what we were studying, pulling this data off of. So it wasn't the small replicated plots, you know, that are standardized research, mainly because I ain't smart enough to do it. Okay, I had to just have big field research, and that way I could handle it. And but we wanted to answer some questions. And, you know, the questions we wanted to answer to is, you know, just what level are our no-till systems functioning? All right, the thing I had a problem with, why is our winter weeds not enough? We can grow henbit, chickweed, buttercup. I mean, we can put down some pretty good biomass in the spring by controlling that. Why was that not enough to keep driving our systems? You know, are we going to have to change the hybrids we're growing? What's the logistics? How are we going to do this? We ain't never done this before. Can we even make big strides in this with just a corn and bean rotation, or are we chasing our tails? Is this stuff just for our northern brethren? You know, everybody that's on YouTube lives above the line where kudzu grows. Have y'all noticed that? You know, you can't get on YouTube if you're not from up north. So, you know, is this just for the folks up north? How long are we going to see till our soil starts changing and see benefits? How long till we're going to see benefits with dead presidents? That's the name, that's a driving force, right? You know, the way I look at it, whoever's billfold gets the fattest is doing the best job, okay? And what data do we need to collect that's going to lead us to wisdom? The initial study outline, okay? There wasn't going to be no tillage. Now, when I'm talking no tillage, I mean no tillage, okay? It's not just a little bit of tillage here or there. It's no tillage. You wasn't doing it before, and we darn sure ain't starting it now. Certainly did. I'm going to throw all this research, because I don't like doing research anyways. Don't mess it up for me. All right? All fields we're going to see at least a 5-species mix. Each producer, I was required to do at least one Haney plot, and we'll get into that a little bit later on. But the baseline data we're going to look at is we're going to take a UT soil, just straight land grant soil test, send some stuff off to Ward's labs for phospholipid fatty acid analysis, the Rick Haney soil test, infiltration rates, aggregate stability, and bulk density. Overall, there was 870 analytical samples. I mean, I got tired of taking soil samples sent off, and a lot of physical samples where we was measuring bulk density, infiltration rates, and all that business. All right. It was complicated, but I fixed it for you. If y'all want to get your phones out, I'm about done, okay? This is the end of my talk. I just went ahead and I graphed everything that we done over the 3-year period. And with that, I got any questions? All right. My point is, folks, it was extremely complicated. Nature is complicated. Ecology is complicated. There is a lot of variables. You think no-till is complicated, you start throwing these jungles in there, and then you get graphs like this. All right, so has everybody got a picture of that? Okay. What have I graphed? It's not a graph of data. There is a lot of wisdom gained in that graph. I gained wisdom. My producers gained wisdom. I'm able to share some of that wisdom. I'm able to share their wisdom. That's all I am. I'm just a chatterbox that talks about the good stuff they do. But that's what we learned right there. Here's how we learned it. Here is one of our real fields. All right? We'd plant the whole thing to whatever cover mix we was planting. All right? Same hybrid, everything the same. Then we'd pick out a strip. That right there either had the or land grant or any commercial labs recommendation or whatever prescription is wrote on a napkin that they just swore by. That's what they done, whatever they want to do. And then right next to it, we'd put Rick Haney's recommendations, which was always a reduction in what we was looking at from a commercial. And we was comparing, and we'd go in there and we'd harvest the middle of one, harvest the middle of the other, okay? These plots average, they might be 4 acres big, they might be 1 acre, maybe 5 acres. What we tried to do is set it up representative of that field. I didn't want to go up here and have Haney's plot on my strongest ground and then put the regular plot down here in some gar hole that ain't never produced nothing, so we tried to keep it equal. What we was planting, starting out, running a 5-species mix that you can see. Currently, we stay with that staple mix, and then we've started adding some other stuff. And we've been successful adding basically anything we wanted to plant. We've been able to grow pretty well. Had a little bit of hard time getting Phacelia growing, more climatic conditions when we started than it was anything else. But that's what just for your information, that's what we've been planting. And I'm not going to get into a lot to managing the covers in this talk. I think I'm giving another talk later on in the week where that's all we're going to talk about is how to design a mix and how we manage this stuff. So what did we gain early on? What did we find out? Biologically, our long-term no-till fields were extremely bacterial dominated. Okay, everything that was there, biological-wise, was out of balance according to the folks that are real smart and say you should have this much this and this much of that. We were way out of balance. The winter weeds were extremely integral to our success in no-till in Coffee County. Without those weeds, the weeds were allowing just enough carbon flow in the system that no-till hadn't crashed on us. Okay, so that is extremely important. Overall, our overall ecosystems were very low on our long-term no-till fields. The water cycle, the nutrient cycle, things just wasn't juning too good. The hard part for me, as much as I love no-till, as much as I've been a proponent, when I really got and sat down and got honest with it about myself, minus a lot of erosion and a little bit of diesel, our inputs and our production model flat out mirrored conventional agriculture. Now, we looked good on the surface. Fields wasn't eroding, everything looked good. But when you looked in our billfolds, it's a little bit different. And logistic-wise, we found out real quick we ain't going to make this happen fiddle farting around with 10 and 15-foot drills trying to plant a crop while we're harvesting another one. Run you through right quick kind of where we started to where we transgressed over the 3-year period so you'll have an idea of what we're talking about. At first, we started out with just enhanced no-till. Alan and I, we get real technical. When we're talking about covers, we work with kneecaps, belt buckles, and armpits. Okay, so that's the three. That's kind of how we work with it. And we started out early on with enhanced no-till, looking at knee-type covers. Starting this, and the only problems we ran into with this is sometimes the tractor wouldn't start. Okay. So other than that, we don't need I'll put this on here, we do not need a roller crimper for this. That was a new toy, and what happens when you get a new toy, you got to go play with it, right? So you don't need a roller crimper for any of that business. You just need to get the tractor started and make sure you drive forward, okay? Had no issues. But you'll see, and successful planting is not running a planter through there without getting it tangled. We want to grow a crop as well. So these just show you that we are growing crops, but you'll see you can see how we're leaving the soil naked and bare right there during pollination. And, and that's what we don't want. We moved into this. Got finger clicking, happy there. Is that thing moving? I think it takes it. Anyways, y'all can see that. Then the second year we moved into a lot of this, got a little bit more biomass, everything's still green planted. Okay, you got to click it again. And it takes that tractor a little while far up. And, you know, so we moved in a lot of this. This is where we got comfortable planting. Had no issues. We was hitting this stuff at an early carbon nitrogen ratio. The vetch wasn't getting rank yet. We wasn't having any wrapping, no problems. Again, you know, everything's fine. We were creating tremendous vole habitat. I'll get into that in another talk. But if you want voles, there you go. That's how you need to plant your covers. All right. So he's having good luck doing that. I got to, you know, everybody called me. You know, this stuff ain't gonna come through this. So I got to be an expert in these little old puny corn, you know, corn plants. They looked awful. They just looked awful. Nobody's happy. You know, my corn don't, you know, social economic context. My neighbor's is looking better. It's out of the ground, looking good. And we was dealing with this slow, cold starting corn. And then everybody was fine once the combines ran through the field and we was whipping everybody's tail. So it all kind of came back to the end. But that's what it's going to look like. End up with a little bit more residue. Corn crop's looking good. And then we started moving in that year into a little bit more. This right here is just slap dab perfect for planting corn. Carbon nitrogen ratio is perfect for our area and the hybrids we're growing. And it's the same as the slide you saw before, but just one little step of management really increases the way the ecosystem's functioning with us crimping this cover and putting it down, okay? Big time difference, and this is when that year is when I really started to be a believer in crimping biomass. Because you can see now we got the ability for all our spheres to function. We've got the soil covered. Everything's working like it is. Weed suppression's even better. Then in the third year, so if you do a little bit and it gets good, you know, what are you going to do the next year? You're going to do some more, right? You know, so this got to be the norm the next year, all right? So we got to, especially going into beans that year, we got to working more and more biomass. You know, kind of, I got a little cocky thinking, you know, if it ain't got trees on it, I can plant through it. So we moved into that. And then we moved into this. This is one of my fields there at the house. And, you know, of course, if I'm gonna talk this talk, I gotta walk it, right? So I let this go as far, we pulled a planter in there, we went about 12 feet and spent 3 hours untangling it. All right. You know, but this is what I wanted. I wanted to learn, okay? And I had to learn. And, you know, you can look back as this slide goes down through, look there at their right-hand side. We got quite a bit of biomass. There was 6 Sasquatches ran out of this field while we was crimping it. All right? So, you know, but we got something ranked there that is unmanageable, but we can make it manageable. Here we are the next day planting beans into what you just saw. After we got out, all the Bigfoots ran out and the film crews left and everything, we was able to plant beans. Okay? Planter's fine. We was able to get a stand of beans. And then we turned around and we made 80 bushel beans across that field, okay, with one spraying, burned down, all right? Then we get into this stuff. Sometimes you get caught with your britches down. I don't recommend, now this may look rank to some of you. This right here is cakewalk. Very tall, but they ain't nothing out there. Thin as can be. You plant into it fine. Didn't have a liquor problem running that planter. Now, I don't want you planting and leaving it like that. Sunlight penetration is awful getting to your corn crop. You got to get it on the ground. But we can plant it. Like I said, if it ain't got trees on it, we can plant in it. So let me break it down. Over the 3 years, what have we seen? Okay? This is a little bit more different data than maybe what you was expecting, but I think it's the data of the context of the system that matters that you need to understand. Our infiltration rates were 2 to 3 inches on our long-term no-till fields. They just continually got better. Over the 3 years, we had fields that was starting out 2 to 3 inches. It went from 5, and then we had a lot of fields that went into 20 inches per hour infiltration rate. Inherit soils are always better than poor soils when we get into this kind of stuff. One thing I did notice, somewhere around 4 inches, how many of you has got them little aggravating washes in your field? Somewhere in Coffee County at around, I don't know if it's 3.86 or 4.12, but somewhere around 4-inch infiltration rate is when we started getting rid of these washes. Keep in mind, infiltration rates are very dynamic. They're going to change with biological conditions, with a lot of things, but the trends are the same. All right? Conventional always stinks. You know, I don't care when I go out there in Coffee County and drive a ring in the ground. You drive a ring in the ground, go hunting for a little while, drive around the government vehicle, whatever you want to do, and come back. You know, it stinks. All right? Why are we getting these infiltration rates? Look at that structure over there on the left-hand side of that no-till field. Look at it on the right-hand side. Just after 2 years of covers, look at the difference. Can y'all see that pretty good back there? That's why, you know, there's a lot going on with this biology, and I'm going to be the first to tell you, I don't understand it all, okay? Do not understand it, never will. I mean, if you got 1 billion critters in a handful of soil, I've got 3 people at my house, and I can't understand everything that's going on, much less put 1 billion bugs, okay? But something's going on. I don't have to understand it all, but I accept it, that that's the way the system's designed to function, and I'm going to push farmers to farm in that image. You know, what's this mean on infiltration for us? This field here, me and Alan took, we had a 2-inch rainfall event the 12th of January 2016. Went in kind of a mile radius just to look at some different systems we had. This field right here, this wet spot, used to be 1 acre, 2 acres big. Keeps getting smaller and smaller. The covers had drowned it out, but the water's gone in these closed outlet depressions. Means a lot, plantability, losing that corn crop right there on those wet spots. Our long-term no-till fields, same type of geographical setting. The water's clear, but it ain't going in the ground. And then that ripper that had a no-till sticker on it, it done its job, okay? Notice the different color of the water. It sealed, it done just exactly what it's designed to do. Burn up all the carbon in the ground, sealed it off. That way when it rained, you didn't have to worry about it going in the ground. It'd go the first hole it found. Luckily, it changed colors and carried some of your topsoil with it. Temperature, soil temperature. What I want y'all to get from this graph right here. When you get above 95 degrees, a lot of things bad happens, right? If it rains, you lose it all. If you got bugs, they get hot, they start dying. So above 95 is bad. So, you know, we've always heard covers and no-till and stuff, they'll keep the soil temperature cooler. And then you never hear nobody say, well, compared to what? You know, you always say it's just cooler, but how warm was that one compared to something else? So I went out and started taking soil temperatures. I always go to the natural setting because that's what I'm trying to mimic. On a day it was 92 degrees outside, sunny. The forest was at 73 degrees. I'm not going to go over all these systems, but you can look at our conventional systems. We're getting well over 100 degrees, 113, 110 degrees. Bad things happen. We're all praying for rain at this point in time. It don't do no good because 85% of it's going to shoot right back in the ground if we do get it. But look at how I start managing with nature's image. The closer I manage to nature, allowing more and more biomass in my no-till systems, how my soil temperatures start cooling off. Look at how my infiltration rates are increasing as my management's increasing. You know, now the forest was infiltrating at 82 inches per hour. All these fields I'm monitoring started with a forest like that. So, you know, I can't really say I've done a lot of good for the infiltration rate and the way the soil is designed to function with my metal over the years, have I? You know, I don't think we can argue it. And for some reason, we'll have pigweeds in the field, but they ain't in the forest. What's that mean? You know, what did the co-op do different in the forest to keep them from growing? All right. That same day, this is emery. This is as good a dirt we got in the state of Tennessee. Look at that corn. Now, I work for the government, and I can't afford no emery. I got to farm Dixon. There's my corn the same day. The best inherit soil there is in our neck of the woods. And then I'm farming a fragipan at 36 inches. What's the difference? It's the biology. It's the soil health. Same day. And it boils down to you got some folks that's willing to get some skin in the game. Try something different. Not afraid to fail. I mean, if I'm farming, I don't know why I'm not going to be looking at something different when, you know, the peer pressure's going on and here's this corn and here's some Daugherty corn. I mean, that cat works for the government. He can't grow corn. You know, I can't. But I can take care of my ground and let it do its work for me. What's going on underneath our feet over the 3 years? What do we see biologically? This gets into a lot of the biological testing. Starting on the right was the first year, and we're moving across from the left because I'm not real good in Excel and I graph things backwards. And it finally turned out, and that's just the way I left it. But we started out with about 2,500, our PLFAs, and this is a bug count, all right? This is the mass of bugs, nanograms per gram of soil. So we had about 2,500 of them in a gram of soil when we started out. Over the 3-year period, we moved into an average of, this is the average across the 58 fields and all them samples. You know, we moved up to 4,500 to 6,500 on our PLFAs. Where we integrated livestock is where we started seeing the spikes biologically, okay, so the higher numbers. Going with the one-day CO2 burst. Started out, this is the one day, this is a respiration, a measure of the biology, how many critters are in there that Rick Haney does. Started out at 50 average. By the end of the 3 years, we're at 350 is what our reading is on that. The last samples I sent in, Rick thought his equipment was tore up. 5, 6, 7, 800, okay? Kept on thinking things were messed up because our soils are responding so well to these covers. But look at our water extractable carbon. We've declined in that. Boy, when I see that, I mean, you don't never want to see nothing decline except pigweeds, right? So when I saw that, it's like, what's going on here? So you got to call somebody like Rick. It's smart. Why is this going on? And basically, our biology is liking what we're feeding it so much that we're just consuming all the liquid carbon, all the root exudates. We're not building organic matter right now. We are building a population. And it's pretty amazing. We started out on average with a soil health score across these 58 fields of 12. Now we're at an average of 25 across all the fields. So what's this mean when we put some data to it as far as yields in these fields that I showed you we set up? Haney corn, when you see Haney corn, that's where we had an input reduction, the regulars, university recommendations, or just whatever the farmer felt comfortable with. I have very rare, and where you're looking at, let me back up on that just a little bit. 200 bushel yield goal on corn, 80 bushel yield on beans. That's our yield goal that we're looking for, okay? So we started out with this in 15 on the first fields, and y'all can see all the data. You can see the increase in efficiency that we're getting with our nitrogen. I'm not, just in one field right here, the JB about halfway down, did the Haney plot make more than our traditional plot with more inputs? Okay, that's a pretty strong inherent piece of ground. Had livestock integrated, and you know, he made 188 bushel corn with a 145.65. I've got my field in it. I did not do a regular plot. One, I ain't got enough land, and you know, if I'm going to talk the talk, I might as well walk the walk. So all mine's in a Haney plot, but I'm averaging making about 170 bushel corn with 125 units of nitrogen. Okay, you all can look at that. I didn't make the cost economics on it because you all can run those figures. You all know what you all spend on nutrients. This just shows you the amount. You all can calculate that in your heads. Okay. Went around 17, looking at an average. We dropped 10 units of nitrogen on average on our Haney plots, went up 3 bushel on our yield. To me, that's not significantly different. And Haney stayed about the same. We're getting a bushel corn, or non-Haney, we're getting a bushel corn per unit of nitrogen out of these cover fields. And making some pretty good yields. Making some pretty good yields when we, you know, everything, what's it averaging? 200 bushel corn with, you know, roughly in there. So, I mean, we're not cutting back yields by implementing these cover systems. The economics are not in those inputs. The economics come in a little bit later on. My opinion, currently on our Haney corn, right now we've got a big factory, but we still don't have a lot of workers. We're building the workforce. But in order to reach our yield goals, which we're pushing the limits on our yield goals anyways, but in order to reach that, we are going to have to tap in and cycle a tremendous amount of organic nitrogen to be able to provide the nitrogen for that corn crop. So that's the future. We're just going to keep building the workers. Beans gets pretty simple. Plant them, and then go pick them. tremendous, which we don't have to have the nitrogen to get the bean yields. If you look at that first field up there, the SA field, that used to be a field that it took a ½ inch rain for us to be able to get a planter in the ground. 5 minutes? Okay. Yes, sir.
What is Haney corn?
That is the corn, the plots where we put Rick Haney's fertilizer recommendations, showing a nutrient reduction as compared to our traditional fertilizer recs. Okay, sorry about that. Sorry I didn't make that clear. Same thing on beans, Haney beans versus non-Haney beans. But look at that first field, 82 bushel beans versus 84 with inputs. This year, this is a 230 acre field that this is in. The whole farm, the whole field averaged 94 bushel beans with a 27, 80, 60. That's pretty darn good beans. It made 89 bushels with sunshine and water. That's pretty good beans too. So you can look at those down through there to see that, we're getting pretty good yields on our beans, and I'm very, very, very comfortable with Rick Haney's recommendations on soybeans. Okay, how do we basically make our wild guesses on what we're going to put down anymore? We don't rely wholly on traditional soil test. We don't rely all on wards, and I don't rely on Rick. I take all three of them, and I put them together, and I try to gain wisdom and see what's going on in my field and make a decision. That's how we're looking at fertility now in Coffee County on a widespread scale. Just to show you that it's not just all data that I'm collecting. Some of you may be familiar with Security Seed and Chemical. This is our plots in Coffee County. John Deere brought down their new model planter for us to try out. That's a 17 model. Okay. But so there we are. We had some drought-stricken covers. We didn't have the best stand. It was a little bit thin. Got a poor man's GPS rolling over on the side. We stole that tar before we have a row marker. But here's industry data planting into this stuff, and all of them together averaged 214 bushel corn last year. So it ain't just me, and it's not just my data. The industry's making, they're making the yields in Coffee County as well. Input reductions. Where's the money at in this? Nitrogen is absolutely, in my opinion, the last thing that's going to go. Okay? Last thing that's going to go. NP and K are not the only inputs. They are not the only thing we spend money on farms. Your savings in my neck of the woods, and probably the biggest part of here, is going to come out of your sprayer tips early on in these systems. That's where the money savings is going to come. Anytime that you reduce a trip across the field with a spray rig, that's money in your pocket. Okay? And when we can start growing beans on average with 5, 6 trips fighting pigweeds, and now we're down to a burn down in one post, that's 4 trips saved. That's money saved. Okay? Wisdom gained up to this point. What have we learned so far? The water cycle is the first thing that's going to return to your farm when you start integrating covers. Whether it's even if it's just enhanced no-till with kneecap covers, the water cycle is going to return. And tremendous things happen to a soil living ecological system that's designed to function in the presence of water when we have moisture in the soil. Major things happen. This is not just adding covers to no-till, folks. Enhanced no-till, kneecap stuff, it's not going to lead to rejuvenation to the degree that we start managing our biomass. Now, let me get a little drink of water right here before I say this. I could care less about organic matter percentage. Y'all can start throwing stuff at me if you want to. I don't care how big a house you live in. Don't care. Don't care if it's 6-bedroom mansion. I care about if Granny's in there cooking 3 squares a day for you. Okay? I do not care about the house. I care about the food. That's what drives the system. Would you agree, Mr. Archuleta? It's the food. All these fields I'm talking about, the highest one I've got is 2.8% organic matter across all these high-yielding fields. We go from 0.9, we're 1.3, 1.4, 1.5. It ain't the size of the house. It's how many teenagers you got in there waiting on granny's cooking. That's what makes the system function. All aspects of this is extremely dynamic. I've been heavily involved in it 4 years. They ain't nothing been the same. They ain't nothing the same on Monday versus Tuesday. It's that dynamic of a system. We can increase resiliency, and I think that's our goal, is increasing resiliency on our farms. And some other wisdom gained, there's a fine line between too much and not enough biomass. I have created too much Sasquatch habitat, okay? This is my head. If you don't, I ain't lying, okay? 13, 14, 15, everything was going good. I knew what I was talking about, son, strutting around like a banty rooster. Everybody's planting covers. You know, long as the tractors start, everything's good. Then 16 hit. About the time we was really pushing biomass. Cold and dry, straight into hot and dry. I'd sucked all the moisture we had out of the ground. Crops look awful. Everybody's about ready to kill me. I mean, I was the talk of the town. They were getting the light pole ready up in town to hang me. All right. Then it turned off hot and dry, but these crops, they just kept going, kept going. Then the combines ran through them in 16. And then we were seeing 60, 70, 80 bushel spreads on corn in our 3-year fields versus our no-till fields. We were flat out whooping its tail. So I went and got a hairdo. And there I am now. And that's the way I feel about it. All right? That's the future. I'm going to have good hair. One thing that I've noticed about everybody that's doing this, they've got 4 things in common. They usually are pretty strong on their theology before they get strong on their biology. They have hope, they have an understanding of the system, and they are committed to it. That's the 4 characteristics that I see prevalent over and over and over in the folks that I work with. I think these producer quotes are pretty important. Old Donald Willis said, you know, Daugherty, we spent a lot of time in the 80s and 90s degrading our soil. It's going to take us a long time. We stopped the degradation with no-till. It's going to take us a long time to build them back. Ray Jones, this is a classic. There ain't no sense in praying for rain if you ain't got nowhere to put it. Another producer. You know, God's been sending us about 40 to 60 inches of rain a year. If he messed up the system, then I'll start looking at a pivot. Barry's saying he's a small farmer, but he's kind of a cut up and said, Daugherty, I like all this cover crop stuff, except now all my ponds have went dry. You know, makes sense, don't it? Chairman of my board makes planting dates a lot easier. We're going to plant when our covers are ready. It's that important to them. A good young friend I do a lot of deer hunting with, he said, Daugherty, I could start buying more farms if I could integrate livestock on all my land. There's a lot of power in that statement, folks. Initial grade scale. What did we do right and what did we do wrong? The first part we done right was education, 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 both for myself, Alan, and then we started spreading the gospel. We diversified from the start in our mixes, and I highly encourage you to do that. Don't piddle fart around with 1 and 2 species. They ain't 1 and 2 species in nature. If that's what we're going to try to mimic, let's go ahead and skip those steps. Context, context, context. We got to understand what we're trying to do in the context in which we're working in. Multi-skinning cats. Got 70 or so folks doing it. They may go to church the same place, they may eat mashed taters the same way, but they are not going to farm the same way. I don't care if they're running the same tractors, everybody does something a little bit different. And that was good for me. That way I just didn't have 2 folks, and I thought that's the only way in the world to make this happen. Everybody's doing it different, so I got to see a diversity of things. We did transition to biomass timely. We didn't start out in heavy biomass. We worked up to it. NRCS programs did not drive what was going on in our county. Okay? We wasn't doing this for EQIP. Now, I'm not going to lie to you. I have heavily subsidized our county. Millions of dollars we have spent on this, but that wasn't what drove it. Okay? We had to do it first before we spent the money. And we integrated livestock. That was key on a lot of these fields. That's the step that really gets us. Where did I mess up? You know, I thought I had plenty of no-till check strips because I had a whole county full of it. But then when the time you start, then you end up with half your county in these systems. Now you ain't got as many check strips, right? So I should have left that. Voles. These are bad little rats, guys. How many of you has got vole problems? Sorry, son of a guns. I tell you what, they're tough. And we're creating habitat. You know, we're the only place that I'm really successful with the vole issues where we had them is where we integrate livestock into those fields. Beneficial habitat, I ignored it. This is a whole ecological system. Need to really start paying attention to our pollinators and all that business as we move forward in more integrated pest management. Rotation diversity, we got room for it. Corn and beans, that's, you know, if we had, you know, we're going to have to look at markets and stuff and start growing stuff besides corn and beans to take this to the next level. Buffalo mimicry. When we have integrated livestock, we've done it the lazy man's way. We can increase and get better and start mimicking the buffalo with high density, short duration grazing. And we need to work on a standardized protocol for these biological testing. Okay, it's so varied with climatic conditions in the field at that day versus the next. And we need to really, and I encourage you all to do this if you're going to start this on your farm, is you want to try to take these biological tests during the same soil climatic conditions, soil temperature, soil moisture, yada, yada, yada. It'll help tell the story a little bit better for you. Now, if we throw everything else that I've talked about today with data, I'm going to finish with this. This is the farm that keeps me going. All right, because we've got up and downs in a lot of this stuff that we're doing. But this farm, the Holy Grail field over there, this whole place, the Holy Grail and the green bean field, they were cleared in 1940. Both of them remained in pasture until 1970. The green bean field in 1970 came into row crop production. It was conventional till till 83. 84, the farmer was trying to or the boy that inherited it was trying to finish up some schooling, rented it out to green beans. And if you're familiar with green beans, when they're ready to pick, you got to pick them. They came in, picked half the field. They got a 4-inch rain that night and came back in the next morning running the pick saws. After a 4-inch rain, they cut ruts in it that deep. Heavy tillage event happened on the green bean field. Then it was no-tilled from 84, currently stayed in no-till. The Holy Grail field stayed in pasture, and I'm not talking rotational graze pasture. I'm talking, you know, it's got cows out there. It stayed in pasture till 2011. A lot of folks here at this conference have been to this field. 2011 came out of pasture straight into no-till, no tillage. You know, first thing you do when you get a piece of ground, you got to get it smoothed up, right? They just started no-tilling it. 13, we started integrating covers. So 70 years, the field had not seen any metal. Soil type's the same. Everything inherently is the same. Fertility-wise, they're the same. Everything's the same. But biologically, they're extremely different. And the resilience, my goal is to have all the fields in my county be the Holy Grail. My goal for you is for you to take your fields to get them functioning this level. We can grow corn when it's good weather. And 14, the Holy Grail, 283 average, dryland corn, versus 230 in the green bean field. Ideal growing conditions. It's like an irrigated crop. 2015, pretty dry. On beans, 64 versus 51 bushel. 2016, this field was in a D4 drought status. Made 192 bushel in a D4 drought versus 105 on the other one. Last year, extremely wet. We had frogs leaving because they was getting tired of it raining. 20 bushel spread. Folks, what is it on this slide? This is resiliency, okay? If all the fields were like the Holy Grail, we don't need crop insurance. We don't need to be worrying about what's going to happen. We may not make 283 bushel corn, but we're going to make a crop, ain't we? And that's the name of the game. We want to make a crop. We've pulled a 315 national corn growers entry out of that field in 14, won the state of Tennessee, planted with that new model John Deere you saw rolling. Okay? Resiliency. This field is a highly functioning ecological system. It's the closest thing I've got to nature. We have the ability to take our fields to this. It ain't going to happen overnight. Here we are just to show you the field. You know, here we are planting beans in it this spring. These are the beans that you saw that made 76 bushel on that chart. You know, real complicated stuff. We're running a 500T drill through this. And then you got the sprayer sitting in the background fixing to burn it down. Now, you don't need a roller crimp. We hit it about right. The biomass is right. It's laying down plenty good with the drill. Nothing's wrapping. You know, just make sure you go straight. Now, I'm a believer. The farmer's a believer. The way to change your ground is through carbon. That is 3 minutes. That's the way to change it. So here we've set this one field out of production this year, planting a summer cover crop, trying just to pump as much liquid carbon into the system as we can. That's about 30,000 pounds of biomass that we're just putting down the ground to feed the system. Here we are coming back planting this year's cover crop. We'd rolled some of it down. We was experimenting just to see if we could plant through that stuff standing, and here it is a little bit later after we done, you know, laying down perfect, didn't have a lick. That's just to show you that we can get a stand of stuff. It's got a layer about that thick. We're probably going to be looking at increasing our liquid nitrogen on that one just a little bit this spring when we get started trying to get a corn crop growing. There's no such thing as I can till a little bit and it be okay. All right, had a field day at that field this year. Heavy biomass crimp. This is all right here within an area not near as big as this room. 34 inches infiltration rate. Where we terminated the covers, same soil, everything's the same, 6 inches. A long-term no-till field right next to it, 2 1/4. Alan, he got a wild hair there one morning. He went down there and tilled one little pass through there. Right next to it, it's 34 inches an hour, folks. Right there where Alan ran the one strip of tillage, 2 inches per hour. Tillage is bad. Tillage will destroy the soil's ability to function. All right, now I got a disclaimer. These growers were not pre-sold. I didn't wear them. Alan didn't wear them. We didn't find them in the dumpster. These were brand new Fruit of the Loom tidy whities. Get them in a 5-pack up there at Walmart. And we buried these on this farm. If you do not think there is power in this biology stuff and there's not bugs down there, folks, let me tell you, if you want to murder somebody and bury them, don't bury them in a no-till field. All right? Put them in one of our cover crop fields. You'll see down there on the bottom right hand, that's that 12-way summer mix you saw us crimping. There's the drawers that came out of that. How come they're not ate up? The biology's there, but what's it want? It wants root, it wants liquid sugar, it wants liquid sunshine, liquid carbon. You know, the bugs would much rather have the natural carbon coming from the plant than they would Fruit of the Loom. But if they ain't none coming, and you got too much, if you got a lot of biology, they will eat your drawers off. The take-home point of this is biomass no-till systems will just flat beat the pants off the other systems. Now, folks, I ain't got all the answers. I'm pretty passionate to what I'm talking to you about. But what I can offer up is on this hand, I've got our long-term no-till. And it's been good to us. And there's nobody that appreciates the heritage and what it's done for this country more than I do. But as I keep looking at these systems, what I can tell you is I do not see the hope in reduction of our inputs. I see these systems getting more and more degraded, and I see these systems getting where at some point in time, economically, I don't think we're going to be able to farm them, okay? Here's what I can offer on this hand, is hope. We do have a hope to be able to rejuvenate our resource, and it's through what I've showed you this evening. It may be different for you depending on where you live, but by a show of hands, let me ask you, does the sun shine where y'all farm? All right. So then understand that your mistakes are not going to be caused by nature, but rather your misunderstanding of how to manage in her image. And I'm going to ask you, don't let one success drive your decisions rather than one of your failures. Don't be afraid to fail. We have hope to be able to rejuvenate our soils. If I can be of any help to any of you in starting that transformation, be glad to. It's been an honor speaking with you. Hope you all enjoy the conference. Thank you.